It's Wednesday. Let's chat. I'm Kanan Chandran, the publisher of stormasia.com, a website that discusses topical issues that are taking place in our lives. And here's a chance to have different panelists come together and share their views about the topic. It's our 50th discussion in this series since COVID started, so it's a milestone. And we look at business, we looked at society, so many things to talk about, and we've kind of covered a lot of ground in these 50 sessions. Today's session, we are looking at something close to my heart because I am in it. It's part of the baby boomer generation and what lies ahead for this group of people. It's been a journey that's quite interesting for the baby boomers. It's, I think there are about 1 million baby boomers in Singapore. I think last count, 2021 as well, they said those aged 65 and above compose around of 16% of the population already. And then that's growing. People are living longer, about 84 years on the average. And it's called the gray tsunami, a gray mustache, so that works. It's a challenging time as well because fertility rates are dropping. And how are we going to cope with all this development that we have in mind that we want to take place as well? So our panelists today to join us in this chat, in this discussion, come from various sectors. You'll be familiar with their names. So in our midst today, we have Mary George, who's the director of SOMAJ, and she's a psychologist, an educator as well, and she's worked in a variety of settings here and abroad. Bernard Harrison, anybody who's been to the zoo will associate that name with the zoo. Bernard's got a double honors degree in zoology and psychology as well, and a master's in zoo design. He joined the Singapore Zoo in 1973, established and managed the world's first night safari in 1994, and left as the CEO of Wildlife Reserve Singapore in 2002 to set up his own firm, Bernard Harrison and Friends. And he says he's very busy now. COVID has sort of brought all the animals out and the people want to try and showcase them. So he's been hopping around the world, zooming around the world for most of it, I think, to set up zoos. And we've got Jeremy Monteiro, a well-known name and face in the music scene, an educator. He was born in the 60s and he continues to be very active in the music scene. He's got concerts very frequently. He's got one coming up this weekend as well. And it's a new direction that he's taking. So rather than retire, he feels that he's still got a lot to offer, right? He remains relevant with his experience and tenacity. And he's also a cultural medallion recipient. Letitia Zhang, she's a director of partnerships and business development at the Caregiver Group. She is not a baby boomer. She may feel a bit out of place here, but no, you're perfectly welcome to understand what's going on because Caregiver Asia looks at the issues around people who are aging and the help that they require and the assistance they may need. Now, I'd like to just ask each of you, how did you envision life in your retirement years when you were growing up? Maybe Mary, would you like to start off with that?
By the time I was a young adult, I didn't think of retirement as a must-do. And so it was more like, what would I like to do in my last 40 years or so after 60, right? And if I have to retire, yes, I will, but I do enjoy working. I do hope that as I pass the typical retirement age, I am able to have more choices in terms of having traveling more, going on longer holidays, etc. So that traditional concept of retirement, that's pretty much there. But will there be a retirement like that? I'm not so sure.
Okay. Bernard, how about yourself?
When I was growing up, so when I was like 20, 25, I couldn't imagine being 70. I'm 70. And when I was 50, I thought I should be living to 120. So I actually hadn't reached the halfway mark yet. So when I hit my 60th birthday, I think I'm halfway doing my life. And I think that kind of sort of optimism helps with the whole business of staying alive. And I think staying alive is one thing. Also, you have to be physically fit and stuff and mentally sound. I just went to a geriatrician, by the way, last month. My wife suggested I go because I'm losing my short-term memory. But so I think it's like just you got to keep focused there, and then you got to make quite a lot of money. Otherwise, actually, you can be living. But if you don't have any money, you might as well just go back into that grave. But so that's a sort of a mixed, optimistic sort of outlook on life.
Okay. Good. A lot of points to pick up on for the discussion. Jeremy, how about yourself?
Well, for musicians, there's no such thing as retirement, right? Because we have a feast or famine kind of existence. So either we are doing well, making a lot of money, or we're not doing any work. Many musicians, 85% of the musicians in Singapore have had no work for the last 22 months. And so that's a difficulty. So we have to work till we drop. So luckily we enjoy this thing called making music.
Okay. Letitia, I know you're still a ways away from retirement, but have you thought of retirement?
Actually, to be honest, not really, because I feel like, okay, I'm right now just really enjoying my career, enjoying the work that I do. And I think it's something that I want to constantly be doing, working with people, meeting people. And so I think even at an older age, that's what I want to continue to be doing, whether it's with Caregiver Asia, whether it's, in another capacity. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So maybe this session will give you some ideas as to how you might want to position your thinking as you carry on with all your assistance for people and in your own life as well. The thing is, Mary, you talked about the retirement age that what if you reach it, but it keeps to be a moving target, right? Retirement keeps moving further and further. Even Bernard, you haven't reached retirement age necessarily. So how do you take that? In a world where living costs are going up, in a country where living costs are going up, and you see a greater divide in terms of the number of people who are growing older, and the number of young people shrinking. What do you see as your plan then? I know, Bernard, you've got certain ideas in mind, but do you have a plan as to how you're going to proceed to fulfill the things that you would like to?
Me? Yeah, I think so. I think so. So I left the formal structure of a working life, and so I actually never thought I'd be an entrepreneur and work for myself, but I did, and I found actually it's quite good, and it's actually relatively easy being a consultant. And so I think the main problem is that because my name is on the company, it's one of those things that you kind of have to be around. And so obviously there are a lot of consultants, and we can see how to change the name and slowly sort of go on with it, so that the company can survive without me, but at the same time I can get money from the company because I can be paid royalties and stuff like that to keep me going. But I think the most important thing in life, besides the physical, and I just went cycling for 1.5 hours this morning, and then I did the 1.5 hours of yoga just before this, and that's sort of not abnormal. I think so. The physical stuff is important, but I think the mental thing is really important. So I think the term retirement is very scary to me, because I think as soon as you say retire, then what do? You put your legs up, watch TV all day, drink yourself into the ground, and you're probably dead in 5 years. So I think it's really important to keep working. So I hope I'll be working until on the day I die. That'll be
120, right? That's what you're looking at.
Yeah, 120. I told my wife I'd be in a monastery 110, and she said, "Well, she'll join the nunnery next door." We'll see how it goes. So we've got it all worked out. We've all got it worked out somewhere in the Himalayas.
Okay, excellent. That's ascending a spiritual plane, literally
Mm.
getting up there. For you, Jeremy, I mean, in fact, for all of you, you're all doing your own thing. So you can pretty much dictate how you want to, at what pace you'd like to move, and at which point you might want to stop doing whatever it is you're doing. It's a bit more challenging, I think, for people who are in an organization and there's the structure, and you're forced to retire at a certain time, and then, or as you hit a certain age, you have to earn less of what you used to take home. So there seems to be, I find inherently within the structure that are challenges put in already for those who are older. Letitia, when you are working with the pioneer generation, when you're caregiving, do they talk about some of these issues that might have made life a bit more challenging for them or given them unnecessary headaches?
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, most definitely. I think, actually at Caregiver Asia, we not just work with people who are actually looking for care, whether it's for themselves or whether it's for their parents. We also work with a lot of caregivers who are actually of that so-called retirement age. But a lot of them are looking for job opportunities, to do kind of like freelance caregiving services, like to their fellow boomers, right? And I mean, they're of like great health, and it gives them an extra allowance, So I think a lot of them have actually started looking into freelancing as an option, in time to come, because it's in their own time. It's whenever they want, if they want to go for a holiday, they can go for a holiday, but they can come back and they can earn a living again, with what they do. And it's also meaningful because you are caring and you're helping families, in need. Yeah.
Jeremy, you've been dealing with young and old, right? Because you're an educator as well. You're with the Singapore Jazz Orchestra. And you've got a lot of youngsters coming into that space as well. And musicians are of a mixed age range, young to quite old. How do you would have a lot of experience managing the sort of generational range. How do you cope with that? Because I think one of the key things that people face is the difficulty to communicate across generations effectively.
Hey, that's a very good question, and I'm glad you asked it. But before that, I want to just say something about retirement for a musician. Musicians, for me, the definition of retirement is being able to stop doing the work you have to do and only do the work that you want to do. I used to joke that the way I made my most money in the past is actually charging silly amounts of money to corporations who want my name on the invitation card and then go and be ignored for 2 hours during the event. Because everyone goes, oh, we got to go, Jeremy's there. But, then they come and there's the wine, the champagne, and I'm just furniture at that point. But okay, that allowed me to then go and play in jazz clubs or concert halls where people listen to me with pin drop silence attention. So it works out, Actually, in the last 10 years is when I started to understand the importance of reaching out to the youth. I think that basically, when we are at our age, we're always tempted to say, yeah, those young people, and at the end of the day, actually, you'll find if you make the effort, you'll find that there are some amazing, amazing young people out there who are old souls, and actually speak to you. Sometimes you feel like your soul age is younger than the young person you're talking to. And so if you can start to recognize that, you can actually learn from them. I believe that we can learn from young people, old people, and fools, because even fools, you can talk rubbish for 2 hours and then there's one modicum of brilliance that you take away that's almost life-changing. So I think young people are really our future, and I know it sounds like a cliche, but in the Jazz Association, for example, where I get to work with both Jazzo, the main orchestra, and Jazzio, Singapore is a unique situation where the youth orchestra plays at 85% the level of the main orchestra. Other countries is usually 50% only, and that's the level of excellence that we've now got in the jazz scene in Singapore. For example, our lead alto player, who's akin to the lead principal violinist in a classical orchestra, is only 23 years old, and he plays as the lead in both the youth orchestra and the main orchestra. So I'm having a ball working with young people and feeling very young in the process as well. And actually, I hope to live to be 120 as well. And I understand that if we wait for 10 more years, they'll actually have the technology and the medicine to keep us going. Not only just longevity, but quality of life. So I'm with you, Bernard.
We'll form a club.
Yeah.
The 120 years, the 120 club.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. You could have whiskey that'll to go along with it. It would be fantastic as well, I think. But you talk about. Bernard, you're talking about going to a geriatrician to sort out your short-term memory issues. I think that's something we all have to contend with. Jeremy, how do you cope with that? Do you find that interacting with the youngsters helps to stem that to some extent?
Well, I have the same problem nowadays. My memory is very bad. And another thing, nowadays, my memory is very bad.
What was that you said again?
No, it's true. I have in the jazz scene now, of course, at 79, going 80 this year, is Luis Soliano, who is my mentor and the godfather of Singapore jazz. And then on the other end, I have this person I just mentioned, Sean Hongwei, who's 23 years old. And these are the two bookends for me. And then, of course, in between is this whole range. I said in a recent interview with UNESCO International Jazz Day that in Singapore now we have the largest number of high quality jazz musicians than we've ever had in our history, and half of them are young people. And the wonderful thing is that jazz is now an O-level elective subject. So recently when I gave a talk, right, I asked my staff, why are 50% or 60% of the audience like below 20? I didn't really realize that now it's an O-level subject at that point, although I've been pushing for it and working for it for so long. And they said, oh, these are the teachers and their students. They're coming here to just get extra input for their O-levels. So it's great, right? I mean, for me, jazz has got a renaissance and it includes people. I think, however, I must say this point, because I've been saying this a little bit to people I've been meeting, even in authority, that very often they think about when they need to push up the youth or push up the young people, they think that it is at the expense of pushing away. They have to push away the mid-age and the old people. There's a lot of that kind of thinking going on, and I'm trying to correct that, because I think what really needs to happen is that, in the old day, you never push away Count Basie or Duke Ellington just because he's 70 years old. You let them continue their leadership positions, and what you do is you expand the space to make way for young people to come up, and to collaborate. Because, in corporations, you tend to want to have people go away for maybe because there's a sharpness you need to be a CEO of a multinational, perhaps. But I also know people who are 85 years, who are still chairman and CEO of the company, and the company can't even imagine. That's not good, actually, by the way, no succession planning, but that, who can't actually operate without this person.
Well, Warren Buffett, for instance. But it's interesting. There's a phenomenon called the grandmother complex, the grandmother phenomena, which happens in certain primitive hunter-gatherers, like the Hasda, I think, in Tanzania. But more importantly, it also happens in the killer whales, in the big killer whales, where the grandmother is a really important person in a killer whale in the pod. And so there's maybe 15, 20 killer whales in that pod. And the grandmother is the one who knows where the fish are, who knows what time of the year the salmon are in these areas. And that's sort of like, in modern day terms, corporate memory is really important, and keeping those people integrated as part of the society is very important.
Yeah, that's a good point you raised, Bernard, but I just find that things are changing so quickly now. I mean, with technology coming in, the parameters are shifting very rapidly. And likewise, I think whales might have a problem too, because of the overfishing that's taking place. Some of those areas where there's fertile grounds for salmon may have moved or may not be there anymore.
Yeah,
so
sure.
is there relevance in that kind of thinking? Does it necessarily have to be about following old methods? Or should there be a bit more of the older generation trying to understand the newer things that are taking place and seeing how to take that on board for themselves, so that at least when you talk to other generations, it's a bit more of a common ground that you're discussing, rather than, I know all this, what do you know, you're a young upstart. That sort of thinking.
Let me speak to that a little bit, extending from what Bernard said just now. If the place that older people with a lot of experience have is a place of wisdom. So, just like the grandmother whale, when you read stories, for the longest time, where I read, for example, about First Nations, the tribes, and how before they went to war, they went and met with the elder to get advice. As a child, I always assumed it was an old man. But actually, those elders that the warriors went to for advice were the oldest women in the tribe. Right? So going back to your earlier question, Kannan, about retirement age, for a lot of people, unlike those of us in the gig economy, for a lot of people, the biggest impact, two big impacts of retirement age. One is when you retire and you try to get another job, it's assumed that you must accept a lower salary, because the wisdom and the experience is not factored in. I mean, I have empathy for small businesses. I run one myself. It is hard to keep up with CEO, extreme end salaries. But for regular people, middle management, the man on the street, why do salaries get reduced when they cross 62? Right? We should actually give them a raise.
Or at least keep to the existing salary.
A raise with the increment being for, in no other time in your life have you had so much wisdom or experience. And we want that. That needs to be factored in at some stage, and that will make it very different for people who rely on salaries.
I think that sort of fits nicely with Normala's question about ageism and the ageist society that we live in. She's wondering whether the panelists can recommend how boomers can deal with ageism and what should happen at the societal level to ensure that the elders are not discriminated against.
What is ageism?
Well, people basically thinking you're old and therefore you're irrelevant. Those sort of things. Essentially, your age works against you. Once you hit 60-something, 70, and you're sort of marginalized to the point of being excluded.
Well, in Singapore, we reversed that. We started to reverse it. For example, as you know, it used to be required that any director on the board, once they reach a certain age, has to be re-elected every year instead of 2 or 3 years, according to the constitution of the company. So that now has been reversed, not only in corporations, but in charities, other non-profits, and so on. But I think I really wanted to just talk a little bit about, Mary said about people needing to understand each other. And I think it's very important for the young people to seek to understand rather than be understood, and for the old people to also do the same. Because at the end of the day, if we show respect, we as boomers show respect and regard to what is being contributed in the discussion by young people, you'll find that they will also start to want to hear what we have to say. And I think very often, because we go into a meeting, older people are, you don't know what you're talking about kind of vibe. And that, I think, really puts off young people to be open to older people. I know a company, for example, where I actually advise, I'm surprised I'm advising a company because I'm the only old person around. And the boss really doesn't like to have to hire what he calls lao chiao, right? The old birds, right? And then basically because he thinks that he'll come and disrupt his disruptive thinking. So I think as older people, we must entertain disruptive thought. We can be the ones to help to mitigate disruptive thought in not becoming anarchy, because unbridled disruptive thinking can result in anarchy. So I think there's a lot of understanding that needs to be seeded between the younger and older generations.
I think the point that I think Kanan made earlier was it is important that it's very important for older people to keep up with technology. I mean, technology and other things, you know, but especially technology. So to be able to talk the same language and do the stuff, and it's you know, I find and because I'm a consultant and I do a lot of Zoom and stuff. Yeah, I need to be quite techie, but I'm not. I'm fortunate that I have a good GM who is. But it's just it's just the simple resistance. I mean, just shopping online. I just don't shop online. You know, I like to go and look at the stuff. Like my son-in-law the other day, we were having some drinks at my place, and I said I ran out of ice. He said, "No problem, I'll get it." And he ordered ice, and I said, "I'll just go across the shop and buy it." You know, he said, "It's already on the way." I said, "You're nuts, son." He said, "It's going to cost $5 delivery for a $1 packet of ice."
Yeah,
that's the way it is. So it's like you got to get to understand, and that's sometimes very difficult for us older people to get. But I mean, you have to, otherwise you will be alienated. You know, so just an old fart. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. You know?
Actually, I feel like
sorry, go ahead, Letitia.
No, I was gonna say I feel like actually COVID actually helped a lot of the older folks to get into technology, and I find that they are more open to it because they don't want to be alienated from their families. You know, like my grandma, she is 90 this year, and she actually learned how to use FaceTime, you know, WhatsApp, face message, and even like Zoom, just so that she can connect with the family. So I feel like COVID actually, you know, helped them to embrace it a little bit more and stop them from being alienated. You know, they could still have that connection. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Mary.
Yes. I was going to share an example of ageism in when it relates to technology. I find that the strongest part of ageism in relation to technology comes with underestimating us. You know, underestimating the boomers, underestimating all the adults. When you look at the whole cohort, there is a disadvantage. 50% of my year didn't go past PSLE. So education does help. Basic education does help in catching up with technology. But by and large, I'll give you an example. I go to the hospitals, you have these screens where you register, tick, 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 tick on the screen, right? Pretty simple. I might be a little slower because I'm reading everyone and making sure I'm giving the right answer. Zoop, one hand will come right, like by my ear and answer for me. Now that's ageism. That's ageism. Assuming I don't know how to tap. What do I do about it? Your question, Kanan, was how do we address ageism? I say confront it. I will turn on and ask that kind young person, you really know whether I was abroad the last 14 days? Do you really know whether I sneezed and coughed and had a fever last night? So why are you answering for me, right? Yeah, so technology plays both ways. It's fun to learn, but I think, at least in my cohort, it's a challenge if you don't have the basic, at least for education, you know?
Yeah, there are a lot of courses coming up as well, trying to get people up to speed on many of these things. Many free courses, and you can use various government grants to enroll in some of them. I don't know whether it's helpful for people who are looking for jobs or just helpful for people to improve their knowledge base.
Well, you also get paid to do it as well, so it's actually a way of generating income, isn't it? I mean, which is good. It's a double-edged sword, I guess.
Yeah, but I also see a lot of new jobs coming up. I mean, a lot of people are becoming coaches, life coaches and executive coaches and things like that.
At 35 years old,
and some at 35 and some later as well. Some when they retire, they become a coach. But 35 years old, a bit challenging. But I think that's where you might face a bit of a problem with communication. But these things, these are part of the disruption. These are part of the changes taking place. How do you view those changes that are taking place? The disruptions.
I realized that if I didn't open myself up to crazy ideas, that seemingly crazy ideas that I wouldn't do, that I would be in trouble. But I also want to have a bit of empathy and sympathy for the fact that a majority of older people who are resistant to technology are just not going to change. Just like in the US, if you decide I want to fall off the grid and just go to Montana and stay somewhere and just, you have the right to do so, and a social structure which allows you to do it actually to an extent.
Yellowstone.
Yeah. So like in Singapore, some of the 85% of the musicians who don't have work are those who haven't been learned how to pivot to do live streaming, like some of my friends and I have, or do Zoom lessons and so on and so forth. Some of them are just excellent musicians who just want to play their bass or their guitar and not really interested in. So I feel that whenever something goes away, for example, when the motor car came along and suddenly you didn't need so many horse bridles for horse riding or for coaches, millions of people, what do? You just shove them over the cliff. And I think that's something we must really think about, to have empathy. We can cajole and we can encourage people to get on board, but a gracious society will not. Just too bad, like you can't be bothered to learn, too bad for you. I think that's really something we need to watch as a society.
Are we a gracious society?
Are we an ingracious society, you asked?
No, okay, you can look at it that way too, but I was asking, are we a gracious society? To start off with.
I think we are gracious people within our society.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think we are.
I think we tend to put down ourselves in terms of how gracious we are and how we sort of maybe it comes from a place of humility, maybe it comes from a place of lack of confidence as a newer country, whatever. But I think we are at the end of the day a lot more gracious than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah.
What we could do more of is smile. Whether you're a teacher, and we could do more of is have a little bit more playfulness in life. That's sort of the other side of gracious, right? You're able to be gracious more spontaneously if you see life as a joyride. You don't have to force the gracious part of you.
I was cycling this morning in Punggol, which has lots of canals. Beautiful canals. And I saw a big plastic bag floating in the canal as I was cycling past, and I had a coffee and I cycled back. And I saw the same plastic bag, but I saw an old man on a bike get off, get one of these long tong pickers up, went down and picked out a plastic bag. Oh. He wasn't a worker. He was a guy who just hates to see plastic. And I was so amazed. I said, my God, yeah, we are a gracious society.
Actually, there's a famous clown. His name is Wavy Gravy. He was the host of Woodstock, actually. Now he wrote a poem called Bozos on the Bus, which I really love. And it's a prose poem. And basically it talks about all of us, whether you're a president or a king or a road sweeper or a musician or anybody, we are all, our life is getting on this bus and we're all bozos. We're all the same. And then he looks at everyone with clown noses and whatever. And then we just, at some point in time, at 120, you need to get off the bus. So I think if we look at each other as nothing more than clowns on the bus, I think it might be
or change bus. Get onto a different.
That sounds better. That sounds better.
maybe
options. So you can take the train as well.
Underground train.
Yeah. I think there are a lot more options today, right, for people. So the ability to change course, to find something else to do, is great, don't you think? I mean, as somebody who's living in this generation, I think the advantage the boomers have is that we've come from a time, we kind of lived in relative peace. We've had a lot of things, we've seen a lot of new technology come into, the TV set that was at home, the phone that was at home, and then we would still go out and play and have friends and mix around. Then, of course, a lot of these things changed. The phone wound up in your pocket, went with you, and now your TV set is redundant almost. You can catch everything on your iPad or your phone, and you can communicate on the fly. So we've seen a lot of change. Some things that people don't understand, like if you put a fax machine in front of a younger person, they'll wonder, what is this? What does this do? You know, right? Or a manual typewriter, or even an old rotary phone dial. How do you work this thing? So, you know, these changes, I mean, do you want to leave a sense of history for the future generations, or do you want to just let them, okay, you know, this is your time, you've got new things to do, just go ahead and do them?
Leaving for the next generation, whether they want to partake of it is for me beside the point. Leaving our heritage behind in terms of oral histories, artifacts is very, very important. I think, you know, I salute National Heritage Board. I went into their archives for the oral histories recently. Oh, it was so much fun listening to these people from, you know, and many of those people are not with us anymore. So yes, I think we do need to document, we do need to capture a very different precious parts of our lives. Even at this point in time, we don't see them as so important. You know, when my parents moved to Singapore, the toilet was a bucket, night soil bucket, right? The trucks came around. I've never seen that thing. You know, so it's maybe I should go looking for it in the and I'd love to hear the story of how, never mind writing to typing to computers, that evolution in one lifespan of having used like soil bucket to regular toilet to heated toilet with all kinds of music playing if you want, kind of thing. To get that perspective from someone who actually saw it happen gives so much depth. And I want to say one more thing. Our history teachers, I think, are doing a great job in tapping into those artifacts, the learning journey is the oral history. So yeah, we should contribute. All of us should be contributing.
Yeah, and I think it's very important to have a sense of history, but I mean, I think it's something which we should be running with in the future. So I have no problem in reminiscing. I mean, I used a soil bucket toilet in Nee Soon in 1973, and I flew on a turbo Britannia from Singapore to London when I was about 4 years old. But I mean, it's like, at the same time, I love technology. I love the future. I love what's going on, and I just get very excited, you know, where we're going. And I certainly wouldn't get stuck saying I wish the Concorde would come back, which actually I think it is actually.
It's coming back,
Yeah. I've got a question here from Alicia, wondering about the other side of what being a boomer means. The boomer refers to the baby boom. Right? So how does the sheer size of the cohort affect experiences and conditions? We grew up in a larger group of, we had a lot of friends. I mean, there's no shortage of people, and we had a lot of time with them as well. I think if the baby boomers, if there was a big swell in the population in today's context, there'd be a lot more devices sold, and maybe a bigger quiet as more people did their own thing on screens. But I don't know. But how do you guys find the growing up at a time when there was so many people around?
I mean, I guess I'm a bit of a younger boomer, right? Well, boomer is from what year actually? 55.
For us is 1947 to 1964.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm a young old man. So yeah, but I really like the fact that we had time. You know, nowadays, about 10 years ago, I was in the US and I made an appointment to see a very good friend, but I had to make this appointment nearly 2 or 3 weeks before. And I said to her, I said, I wish that this doesn't happen in Singapore, because now I can still call my best friend, you know, my drummer Tama, and say, hey, want to makan tomorrow? And most of the time, right, I mean, 8 times out of 10, they will say, yeah, or even now, you want to go and have kopi or not? It's like you can just make a, nowadays, then now Singapore's actually become like that. People can't see me and I can't see people most of the time, right, without a 2-week appointment. So I miss that. And I think we used to, as boomers, that's one of the blessings of our earlier life. You know, I often say to friends, I say the world that we live in is not the world we grew up in. And I mean, that not necessarily, that's probably the same that for everyone, our parents would have said the same thing, and the young people will eventually say the same thing as well, right? I mean, now we're with our devices, but I think by the time the young people are old, you don't even carry a device, you just press your temple and you start talking to people, you never know. So yeah, I mean, but I miss that's why I love being involved in music, like rehearsing with this wonderful orchestra I'm rehearsing with this week. To be able to be in a room, safely distanced, of course, with like 27 other people, you know, and then having little conversations during the breaks and all that. I think this is as much fun as rehearsing or making the music. So I hope people don't lose that, because I know some people nowadays, if you call somebody, it's as though you have committed home invasion, you know, and before, my old friends, people are my age and 10 years younger, they can call me anytime, you know, and I can call them anytime. They won't like, why, after put on, why they call me? I mean, you know what the phone is for or not? Yes, the phone is for talking. Not just.
That is one of the things, yeah. No, I find, you know, that whole messaging, the number of messages you go through just to get a small thing done, when it could so easily be accomplished with one phone call.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of time you waste in that. Sometimes a day, 2 days go by before it gets done, when you could have been just sorted out with one quick phone call.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, that's the way it is. But you know, so you got to learn how to accommodate all of that. Sometimes you just pick it up and call and shock them into a response.
So I mean, I don't pick up any call I get in Singapore on a landline, because it's always Ministry of Health. You know, it's always the Ministry of Health.
I am fine. Leave me alone.
Yeah. So I only pick up WhatsApp. You know?
Of course, with all the phishing going on, just don't answer the calls with a country code in front of it.
Yeah.
Just leave that out of it.
To us boomers, phishing means all other thing, doesn't it, Bernard? You know.
I must tell you, when I was at the geriatrician, I asked him. I did some tests on my short-term memory and stuff. And he said, "Well, it seems to be okay, but you know." I said, "Yeah, but I mean, I know that, you know, I say I'm going to go and get something. I go into a room, I get distracted, I pick up something else, come back, and I forgot to bring what I wanted to get. You know, that's so typical. If you don't experience it yet, you will." So I said, "What can you do about this?" And he said, "Well, you know, I don't know. I mean, it's like, we'll send you for some more tests." And I said, "Well, what can I do now? I mean, there must be a guide or a book or something which tells you to put your keys in the same place, you know, whatever it is that one does to increase your efficiency managing short-term memory loss." And he said that there wasn't, you know, and I'm sure that there must be websites, I haven't checked yet, but that seems to be a very important thing that psychologists like Mary would be looking at. I mean, there's a book to be written there. I don't know if they can make any money out of it.
There's tons of stuff online. You just have to, you know, put in help for loss of short-term memory, and you get lots of tips.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering why he didn't say that.
Well, he wants to put it through more tests. That's why.
Question you had about what does being in a boomer generation mean? The baby boom part of it. You know, anyone who's really interested in looking into it in depth, there's a great book called The Pinch by David Willett. It refers to the UK, but a lot of it is relevant here, where he explains really well how, because we're such a large cohort, we basically have market force, market power and voting power. And I think that's something we shouldn't forget, that our voices matter because we have critical mass. And then he also goes on, I'm borrowing from him here, that the sad thing is that young adults do not have the same opportunities we had to make money. They have other opportunities. But we were at the right place at the right time in terms of economic development, the spikes, right? And David Willett says, perhaps tongue-in-cheek, that the best way for young adults today to get wealth is to inherit it. I'd like to believe otherwise. I think hopefully we will give them more of an inheritance, just wealth.
Okay, Yeah, well, inheriting, sure, that's convenient. If there's money to be inherited, that's useful. If not, well. Okay, last question around everything off. What advice would you have for your younger self about retiring? Bernard?
Don't retire. Don't retire.
Okay.
If you can worm your way into staying as long as you can, stay in.
As a younger musician, especially that, I used to make a fair bit of money when I was younger, writing jingles and stuff like that. I also ended up spending more money than I earned. So to my younger self, I would have taught him something about prudence and frugality to a point, because that really, has been a difficult. That's why I can't actually, if I wanted to, most people at this age, you just say, I don't need to work anymore, just do what I want. But I need to work for at least 10 more years because of that kind of younger foolishness. So that's what I would share with my younger self.
If you love the work you do, go on. Retirement is an artificial concept in many, many ways. But I would also tell my older self, don't hog all the space. We need to make room. Jeremy, I like your point about expanding the stage. We really need to be sensitive to that. We need to make room because we're living longer than ever before. We might be the big blockage. So be sensitive to that and make room for everyone.
Okay. So Letitia, what would you tell yourself about retiring? Now that you've heard all these other views.
I think for me, I used to have like, okay, maybe retirement is the goal, right? For most people, that's kind of like the general direction. Okay, I want to retire. And then there's like no answer to like what after. So I think today I learned a lot about not retiring, really just enjoying what you're doing, and always having something to look forward to and be excited about. There's no one end goal per se, there are many, many goals that you can constantly create at any stage of your life.
Okay,
But
great.
I guess you've got to love what you do.
You do.
Not to retire, otherwise,
That's kind of important in the whole process, right? Somebody said, why am I retiring? I'm not tired. So I can just carry on. But thank you, boomers and non-boomer alike, for sharing, your thoughts about this whole process of aging and growing old and being somebody who might retire, may not want to retire. But I think key in all of this is to stay active, do things. Bernard, as you said, if you like doing something and you can do it, go ahead and do it. And if you have others who can also do it with you and it can add value to the process, do that as well. Involve people, incorporate people into your whole your onward journey, right? So that at some point when you have to get off the bus, you're satisfied with that journey.